Hey, good afternoon. This is Kevin Gilmore with the National Weather Service New Orleans Baton Rouge office located in Slidell, Louisiana. This is your weekly weather briefing for Thursday, June 27th. We're going to start this off with a situation overview where we'll be talking about the impacts we could be seeing here for the next 5 to 7 days. We're going to start things off with the tropics. We're going to have two systems that we're going to be monitoring in the Atlantic. We'll talk more about that coming up. But the big story here locally is going to be these dangerous heat indices that's going to be coming up this weekend, especially in the next week. And then daily hit or miss rain chances that we've been seeing for the past several days will continue all the way through this upcoming weekend and into next week, where a few storms may be strong and could produce isolated flash flooding. And then we're going to look even beyond the next 5 to 7 days and talk about see if this heat will stay around or stay up for the next all the way through next week into next weekend as we continue into the month of July. Starting things off with the tropical weather outlook, there's two areas that we are currently monitoring in the Atlantic Basin. One that is going to be crossing the Yucatan, getting into the southern Gulf, has a low 30% chance of development in the next 7 days. This system will likely be impacting Mexico and stay to our south, with no direct impacts expected here locally across southeast Louisiana and southern Mississippi. Another area we'll be monitoring in the central Atlantic has a high or an 80% chance of development in the next 7 days. We have plenty of time to track and monitor this system, as it'll take about another 5 days before it enters the far eastern Caribbean. And from there, we'll keep a close look at it, and you should too. So be sure to check back to official sources for more updates as the system nears closer, and we'll keep a very close eye on it. Otherwise, no direct local impacts are expected to the local area for the next 7 days. 7-day threat outlook, talking about the local weather here, that we're going to be talking about the heat, severe weather, and heavy rain risk. Really, as you can see, the big story here is going to be the heat, as we're going to be seeing heat indices building into our 106 to 112 this weekend. So those with outdoor plans really need to plan accordingly to protect yourself from the heat. And then very dangerous heat indices possibly getting into Monday and Tuesday, nearing into the lower 1 teens possible. So we may have some heat headlines in effect this weekend and the next week. So be sure to check back for that. Otherwise, like we said before, daily scattered hit or miss rain chances will persist. Can't rule out a strong thunderstorm at times that could produce some high winds and some dangerous lightning, but widespread severe weather is not anticipated through the middle of next week. And then, as we see with any storm down here this time of year, copious amounts of moisture with these storms could produce some localized flash flooding, something to kind of bear in mind. But again, no formal risk at this time, but just something to keep in mind if you happen to be outdoors or traveling. If you go through any of these thunderstorms, that some localized flash flooding could be possible, or ponding on roadways, what we typically expect from these heavy thunderstorms. A little bit of detail what we're discussing with this dangerous heat approaching. We've been dealing with it already, but it's going to be becoming potentially excessive as we get towards the weekend and the next week. These are select locations point forecast showing you the heat indices at the very top is going to be the main focus. Now the temperatures will be hot themselves, but we're not expecting any type of record heat. But it will be hot still. Highs will be in the mid to upper 90s for most locations, but not expecting any record-breaking heat. We're not expecting 100-degree heat. It's the heat indices due to the combination of these temperatures with the moisture that's producing the dangerous heat indices that we're going to be expecting. And then the overnight lows there you see in blue are not going to be really cooling off much. Lows will be barely even getting below 80 for New Orleans. Some locations will pretty much be in the upper 70s, so it'll be staying warm all night and warm and humid, so not a lot of time to cool off. And as you can see there too, the rain chances staying elevated roughly in the 30 to 70% range all the way through the middle part of next week. Now looking beyond this, day 8 through 14, now we're talking about late next week into next weekend. Is there any break in this heat coming? Hate to say it, but not really. It looks like we'll be having an above normal chance of above normal temperatures all the way through next week. So expect those heat indices to remain elevated, as will those temperatures all the way through next weekend. As we're talking about the precipitation, there's a chance we may be leaning slightly towards below normal precipitation. So maybe some of that heavier rain chances will be backing off late next week into next weekend. So if you have any plans around that time frame, just keep that in mind as we get towards towards the later part of next week, as we may see a little bit of a backing down of those rain chances. And a little bit of a summary of what we just discussed here. Well, again, we'll be monitoring those two systems in the Atlantic. One that's going to be in the Central Atlantic, we'll be monitoring as it approaches the Caribbean in the next 5 days. Dangerous heat indices this upcoming weekend into early next week. Again, make sure you take the necessary precautions to protect yourself from this type of excessive heat. Daily hit or miss rain chances will persist. A few storms may be strong and produce isolated flash flooding. And then even beyond this, the heat looks like it'll be continuing to crank up all the way through next week into next weekend. And with that, we hope you have a great rest of the week and a great weekend.